Have you ever wondered why your absence can sometimes speak louder than your words? Why, after days or even weeks of silence, he suddenly texts you out of nowhere? What is it about stepping away that can make a man finally start to feel something he wasn't showing before? If you're in a space where you're asking yourself, is he even thinking about me? Or did my silence go unnoticed? This video is going to hit home. Here's the truth. Absence isn't just about distance. It's about emotional presence, or lack thereof, and how the male psyche reacts when something once consistent suddenly disappears. Most people assume men are emotionally detached or indifferent, but the reality is far more complex. Men don't always process emotions in the moment. Their reaction to absence isn't instant. It's delayed, internal, and often subconscious. But when it hits hard. And the moment a man realizes what's missing, it creates emotional tension, sometimes longing, sometimes regret, and sometimes even a deeper craving for connection. But here's the twist. Absence doesn't always bring him closer. If not understood and applied wisely, it can backfire. In this video, we're diving deep into what really happens inside a man's mind when you're gone, emotionally or physically. You'll learn the exact emotional stages he goes through, why silence can trigger reflection or retreat, and how to tell if he's starting to feel your absence or using it to detach. Stick with me. This isn't about playing games. It's about understanding power, space, and the emotional truth of human connection. Let's begin. Absence has a strange way of amplifying everything we try to ignore. When someone you care about disappears, emotionally or physically, your mind doesn't just fill in the silence. It magnifies it. For men, this psychological effect is even more pronounced because most are conditioned to suppress emotional processing in real time. They don't always deal with discomfort head on. Instead, they compartmentalize, push it away, distract themselves. So when you're no longer there, no calls, no texts, no presence, it creates an unexpected emotional void that the mind struggles to reconcile. Suddenly, the messages you used to send aren't there to scroll through. The patterns are broken. The comfort of knowing you're just a reply away is gone. And because men often rely on rhythm, structure, and habit in relationships, your absence disrupts that rhythm. Not with chaos, but with silence. A silence that starts to echo louder the longer it lasts. But what's most powerful about absence is that it removes the option of interaction. And with that comes reflection. In your presence, he could deflect. But in your absence, he's left with himself. And that's where the emotional shift begins. He starts replaying moments, the way you looked at him, the things you said, how you made him feel. And those memories, they don't just stay memories, they become emotional triggers. They stir up curiosity, guilt, longing, even jealousy. Because when something felt certain and is suddenly gone, the brain registers it as a loss, even if he didn't fully appreciate it when it was there. This is where absence becomes powerful, not as a tactic, but as an emotional disruptor. It forces a confrontation with feelings that were easier to ignore when you were available. It creates contrast between what he had and what he's now without. And the truth is, most men don't feel the full weight of your value until it's measured against your silence. That's when presence turns into impact. And impact is what lingers. When you're gone, when the messages stop, when the energy shifts, when your presence fades, something subtle but powerful begins to unravel inside a man. And it doesn't happen all at once. It unfolds in layers, often slowly, quietly, and unexpectedly. At first, there's a sense of relief. Yes, relief. Especially if there was conflict or tension before the distance. Men often associate space with control. It gives them a break from emotional intensity, a breather from what they may have felt overwhelmed by. In this phase, it can seem like he's fine, calm, unbothered, detached. But that calm is deceptive. It's not peace. It's pause. Because shortly after that comes the emptiness. The routine he never thought much of starts to feel incomplete. The text he used to expect in the morning, it's not there. The voice note, the emoji, the "did you eat?" the "let me know when you get home," gone. And in that quiet, his mind, the one that loves distraction, avoidance, noise, starts wandering. Not because he wants to, but because there's nothing else to hold on to. And now, Now he starts to feel. He may not fully understand what those feelings are yet, but he notices something is off, something's missing. This is where emotional awareness begins, not from presence, but from absence. Your energy, your attention, your care. They weren't just gestures, they were emotional anchors. And now that they're gone, he starts to realize just how much space you held in his world. For some men, this realization brings longing, a craving to reconnect, to feel that emotional security again. For others, it brings regret. He might start remembering things he said, or didn't say, times he dismissed you, moments where he should have shown up, but didn't. And those memories hit differently now, because there's no comfort zone to fall back into. Then there's the ego. A man's pride often doesn't want to admit that he's feeling the impact of your absence. So he'll wrestle with himself. Should I reach out? Should I wait? Does she miss me? Is she moving on? This internal dialogue creates emotional tension, and tension breeds action, whether it's a message, a stalk through your socials, or complete withdrawal, if the fear becomes too strong. But here's the quiet truth behind it all. When you're gone, he starts to see you more clearly, not just as someone who was there, but as someone who mattered. The value of your presence isn't loud. It's in the small, consistent ways you showed up. And those are the things that echo the loudest in your absence. It's not about punishing him with silence. It's about realizing that distance reveals what presence often hides. And when you're no longer filling the emotional space, he's forced to face what he really feels, without your influence guiding the moment. That's when the emotional truth shows up, raw, unfiltered, and often too late. One of the most confusing experiences in a relationship is when a man pulls away only to come back later like nothing ever happened. After silence, distance, or even what felt like emotional abandonment, he resurfaces. And often, it's not because he suddenly figured everything out. It's because silence creates pressure. When you remove your presence, not out of anger, but with quiet intention, it shifts the emotional dynamic. You're no longer reacting, chasing, explaining, or proving your worth. You've stopped feeding the connection, and that creates a vacuum. One he starts to feel in ways he didn't expect. At first, he may try to ignore it, distract himself, stay busy, tell himself you'll reach out eventually, or that he didn't really need the connection in the first place. But over time, the silence begins to confront him, not just with the reality of your absence, but with the emotional consequences of his behavior, his choices, and his assumptions. Silence doesn't just remove your voice, it removes his comfort. And here's what often happens. When a man is used to emotional access, your kindness, your attention, your warmth, he starts to depend on it, even if he never says it out loud. When that access is taken away, it forces him to feel your value, instead of simply enjoying it. That's the moment he starts replaying everything. The way you cared, the patience you showed, the effort you gave, all the things he took for granted because he never had to earn them. Now, without your energy there to soften the emotional landscape, reality becomes sharper, and suddenly, you're not so easy to replace. It's not just nostalgia, it's a reckoning, a confrontation with the self. And in that space, the impulse to come back isn't always about love. Sometimes it's about validation, sometimes it's guilt, and sometimes it's fear. Fear that you've moved on. Fear that someone else now has the version of you he never appreciated. Fear that your silence wasn't temporary, it was final. But for many men, coming back is an attempt to reset the emotional balance. It's a way of testing, can I still reach her? Is she still emotionally available? He wants to know if the door he once walked out of is still open, even if slightly. That's why they often return, not with accountability, but with casual energy. A hey stranger, a reaction to your story, a late night thinking about you. Because they're not always ready to dive deep. They just want to know the connection hasn't completely died. But here's the key. Your silence taught him something your words couldn't. It gave him space to feel, to miss, to confront. And whether he comes back for the right reasons or not, it's proof that your absence had emotional impact. Whether or not you let him back in is now your choice. Taking space in a relationship is powerful, but it can also be misused. And if you're not clear about why you're stepping back, the line between healthy emotional distance and manipulation can get blurry fast. Let's be honest, Silence can speak volumes, but what it says depends on the intention behind it. Healthy space is rooted in self-respect. It's a conscious choice to step back, not to punish the other person, but to protect your peace, regain clarity, or reconnect with your emotional center. It says, I need time to hear myself, to feel what's real for me, and to stop bleeding energy into something that doesn't feel reciprocal. It's not about teaching someone a lesson. It's about listening to your own. On the other hand, emotional manipulation uses distance as a weapon. It's the silent treatment designed to provoke a reaction. It says, I'll disappear so you'll chase me. I'll pull away so you feel insecure. I'll create confusion so you'll fight harder for me. That's not emotional maturity. That's control disguised as communication. The difference is energetic. One is grounded in peace, the other in power play. Healthy space allows both people to breathe, reflect, and return, if they choose, from a place of deeper understanding. Manipulation demands a response. It's fueled by ego, by fear of losing control, by the need to feel wanted, even if the connection isn't healthy. So how do you know which one you're operating from? Ask yourself this: if he doesn't react the way I want him to, will I still feel good about the choice I made? If the answer is yes, you're likely creating space from a place of integrity. If the answer is no, if the silence is only valuable to you, if he comes running, it might be time to check your intentions. This doesn't mean you're being toxic. It means you're human. Most of us have been in situations where we wanted to be missed, seen, fought for, but emotional growth asks for something deeper. Honesty. Taking space is only powerful when it's genuine. When it's less about what you want the other person to do, and more about what you need to feel whole again. And when space is real, it creates a clean emotional boundary, not a game. The truth is, men can feel the difference. Authentic absence feels still, peaceful, final. Manipulative absence feels chaotic, sharp, emotionally charged. One invites reflection, the other creates defensiveness. So if you're stepping back, do it for you. Not to provoke guilt, not to force clarity, but to reclaim the version of yourself that stopped begging to be understood. Because the right kind of distance doesn't push love away, it makes room for it to grow. When you step back from a man emotionally or physically, it's natural to wonder if he even notices, if your absence has any impact. The truth is, men often feel that shift more deeply than they'll admit. But their way of processing and showing it doesn't always look the way you expect. It's usually subtle, delayed, sometimes even confusing. So how do you know if your absence is affecting him? Pay attention, not to his words, but to his behavior. One of the clearest signs is random, out-of-nowhere contact. A late-night hey, a story reaction, a meme he sends with no context. These seem small, but they're emotional check-ins. He's testing the water, not always to reconnect immediately, but to see if the door is still open. These tiny breadcrumbs are often his way of saying, I feel the distance, and I'm not sure how to handle it. Another sign, curiosity cloaked in casualness. He might ask mutual friends about you, or suddenly start engaging with your social media again, watching every story, liking old posts, maybe even following and unfollowing you. These aren't accidents. They're subtle attempts to stay connected without having to be vulnerable. You might also notice a shift in his energy if you do reconnect. He's more present, more attentive, maybe even a little anxious. He listens more, asks deeper questions, or becomes unusually quiet. That's because he's feeling something he hasn't fully processed. The emotional impact of your absence is still settling in. Then there's the defensive behavior. If he starts posting more, showing off, or trying to look like he's thriving without you, this isn't always confidence. Sometimes it's ego trying to mask emptiness. It's him saying, I'm fine without you, when inside he's not quite sure. A big one, sudden regret or reflection. If he reaches out with more depth, not just hey, but something like, I've been thinking a lot, or I miss how we used to talk. That's a sign your absence has created emotional pressure he can't ignore. When a man begins to reflect instead of react, it means your silence has done what your words couldn't. It made him listen to himself. And finally, if he starts mirroring your distance, it can also be a sign he's affected, even if it doesn't seem like it. Sometimes, silence triggers fear or self-protection. He may retreat further because he doesn't know how to close the gap. Not every reaction is mature, but it is still a reaction. So if you're wondering whether your absence has meaning, trust that it does. Not because he's suffering, but because energy doesn't lie. When something real is missing, it leaves a mark. And whether he shows it with a text, a stare, a silence, or a shift, the signs are always there. You just have to see them clearly, without needing them to validate your worth. Emotional detachment isn't about pretending you don't care. It's not shutting down, going numb, or building walls around your heart. True detachment is about choosing peace over chaos, clarity over confusion, and self-respect over chasing connection at any cost. It's the moment you stop begging for clarity from someone else and start finding it within yourself. When a man is distant, inconsistent, or emotionally unavailable, it's easy to make his behavior your problem, to analyze every message, every silence, every shift in tone. But emotional detachment says, I don't need to decode someone who's not choosing to show up clearly. You detach not to punish, but to protect, not to prove a point, but to rediscover your power. Confidence in detachment starts with trusting your intuition. That quiet inner voice that knows when something feels off, even when you don't have the evidence. Most people wait until the damage is obvious before walking away. But confident detachment listens early. It knows when your peace is being compromised, and it doesn't need drama or closure to move forward. It's also about reclaiming emotional responsibility. You stop making someone else's presence or absence the center of your self-worth. You stop needing them to miss you, validate you, or chase you in order to feel whole again. Your value isn't up for debate, and it never depended on their recognition. This kind of detachment allows you to observe rather than absorb. You see the behavior, you feel the sting, but you don't get dragged into the emotional chaos. You don't rewrite your boundaries just to hold on to someone who's already letting go. And here's what happens when you detach with confidence. Your energy shifts. You stop over-explaining. You stop waiting for a reply. You stop wondering what you did wrong. Because you finally understand, it's not always about you. Some people are just not emotionally ready. Some connections are meant to wake you up, not stay. And some distances are not losses. They're redirections back to yourself. Now that doesn't mean you become cold or indifferent. Emotional detachment isn't about denying your feelings. It's about not allowing your feelings to run the show. You still care, but you care with boundaries. You still love, but you love yourself more. And you still feel, but you let those feelings guide you toward healing, not obsession. To detach confidently is to say, I choose peace, even if it means letting go of something I wanted. That is not weakness, that's strength, disguised as surrender. Because when you learn to detach from what doesn't serve you, you create space for what truly will. By now, you've seen that absence isn't just about walking away. It's about creating emotional space. Space that reveals truth, shifts dynamics, and forces clarity where confusion once lived. It's not a tactic, it's a transformation. And when done with intention, it's one of the most powerful forms of communication. The way a man reacts to your absence tells you everything you need to know, not just about him, but about the emotional foundation of the connection you shared. Does he reflect, grow, miss you, and return with depth? Or does he retreat, deflect, and protect his ego instead of reaching for resolution? Because what you're really learning isn't just how he feels about you, it's how you feel about yourself in the absence of his presence. And that's the biggest takeaway here. Throughout this journey, we've explored the psychological weight of space. We've talked about how men often feel the absence more deeply than they show, how silence creates emotional discomfort that can spark realization or resistance. And most importantly, we've uncovered the power of emotional detachment, not as a punishment, but as a path to reclaiming your peace. Here's what I want you to remember. You do not have to chase love. You do not have to prove your worth to someone who can't see it clearly. And you do not need to fill the silence when it becomes uncomfortable. Let it be uncomfortable, because that space is where the truth rises. If someone genuinely values you, your absence won't go unnoticed. They will feel the shift. They will hear the silence. And if their heart is open and their mind is clear, they'll reach out, not just to reconnect, but to rebuild, with awareness, with care, with intention. But even if they don't, that silence still served you. It showed you where their emotional capacity ends and where yours begins. The point isn't whether he comes back. The point is whether you come back to yourself. Whether you stop measuring your worth by his attention. Whether you stop settling for half-present love in the hope it will one day become whole. This journey isn't about revenge or regret. It's about realignment. It's about making space for peace, self-respect, and healthy connection. You deserve to be loved in a way that doesn't require distance to be appreciated. But until that love shows up in your life, your absence from what isn't right is the boldest act of self-love you can offer. So as this video comes to a close, ask yourself, am I ready to stop chasing clarity from someone else and start creating it for myself? Because the moment you answer yes, that's the moment everything begins to shift. Now it's your turn. You've just spent the last few minutes diving deep into the emotional psychology of absence, how it impacts a man, how it reshapes connection, and how it ultimately brings you back to your own emotional truth. But this isn't just a one-way conversation. This space exists for you too. I want to hear from you. What resonated most with you in this video? Have you experienced that moment where your absence said more than your presence ever could? Did you walk away from someone you loved, only to have them come back when you finally chose yourself? Or maybe you're still in it. Maybe you're in the middle of the silence right now, wondering if it means anything, questioning if he even notices you're gone. Wherever you are in your journey, your story matters. Your voice has power, and by sharing it, you may be giving someone else the courage to let go, to heal, or to finally stop second-guessing what they already know deep down. So drop a comment below. Whether it's a full story, a single moment, a question, or just one word that captures how you're feeling right now, this is your space to express it. You never know who needs to read what you're brave enough to write.